Hello there. Thank you so much for joining us right here on CNBC Africa for this special edition of our ministerial conversation. Now, Rwanda has been able to make important economic and structural reforms, and along these lines, been able to sustain its upward economic growth rates over the last decade. In the following interview, I will be speaking to Rwanda's Minister of Infrastructure, Ambassador Clever Gatete, on Rwanda's journey towards infrastructure development. Now, Rwanda is a country that actually been, on the move in terms of trying to put its house in order, and the infrastructural needs must have been really many. I would like you to just take some time and talk to us about those needs, building the country's infrastructure from scratch to where we are today.
Well, first of all, that's the mission of this ministry, the ministry that is in charge of transport. I'm sure you've seen all the roads being constructed all over the country, in charge of the air transport, in charge of water transport, but also in charge of energy, water, sanitation, housing, and urbanization, plus little settlements, as we have seen. So that's our mission. And all the infrastructure projects, they consume a lot of money. And there's no way the normal budget, the normal resources of the government can be able to finance all these big public infrastructure. Unfortunately, most of the infrastructure we are talking about is public goods, meaning it's, the private sector is not investing heavily into some of these infrastructure projects, such as roads, for example. These are public goods. But at the same time, also in terms of energy, in terms of water, you find all these are the things that are consumed by every citizen that government needs to really invest in. And since our normal resources are not sufficient, we normally supplement it with money that is borrowed from our development partners, or some of the grants that could come in terms of supporting our development programs. So working together with the development partners is very, very important in order for us to be able to deliver the services that are required to our population. Right. So that's why the whole aid, the whole partnership has been very critical for us.
Now, financing these needs must have been really difficult, or should I say is really difficult. So what have been the financial resource mobilization models that Rwanda has put in place in order to attract financing in this sector to finance these projects?
It has been a long journey, because initially after the genocide, it was very difficult because the needs were so many. As you very much remember, every area, from education to health to social infrastructure, economic infrastructure, the governance sector, they all required money. And at that point, we didn't have the money. We didn't even have the institutions, as you remember, after the genocide, when it started. Revenue Authority was put in place after 1998, around that period, even to start collecting resources. In 1996, at that point, we are collecting 56 billion Rwandan francs in terms of the entire government revenues. That was the budget that we put in place. So you can imagine at that point, when you don't have enough resources, then in terms of distributing the ritual resources that you have is a big challenge. And not many donors were really interested in terms of financing some of the infrastructure projects. So what we did was every donor was going to every area. Even with ritual money, they would scatter it into so many areas. So, and requiring so many processes for us to be able to access the money. So in 2004, that's when we started the Development Partners Coordination Group. And that group helped us in terms of bringing every donor together, so that this time we can align their resources together with our own budget, our own domestic resources, to be able to finance specific areas, rather than intervening in every area. And so we started that group. We had the Development Partners meeting that used to happen every 2 years, and then also the retreat of the development partners, which is very important to be able to evaluate ourselves. So when the Minister of Finance initiated the process of saying, let's have an external aid policy that was adopted by the government. These are the rules of the game. This is how we are going to work together. And then everything should be also done within the framework of Development Partners Coordination Group. That was to organize ourselves together with our partners on how to support the development process. And then we also introduced the division of labor. I'm sure the Minister of Finance should have may have elaborated on that. Division of labor, whereby you don't need to finance everything. Just pick 3 areas that you think are in line with your aid policy, and then be able to focus on that so that you can have impact on that. And then what we realized was, it's not just giving money and then having government to account. No, let's do it together. Let's have clusters for different sectors, and which are co-chaired by the government, but also with the development partners, specializing in that specific area. So that helped us to organize ourselves. And then from there, we can see where the money is going, the implementation challenges together, and also look at it in different ways. Because there are obligations of the development partner, there is also obligations of the government. Those can be assessed within the clusters. And then we report back at the end of the year, during the retreat, to see how we performed in terms of, for example, the resources coming on time, in terms of the implementation, what happened, how do you overcome the challenges. I think working together has helped in terms of improving the efficiency. But coming to the infrastructure side, infrastructure is very expensive. And initially you find that the bilateral governments were not very much interested in financing infrastructure. So, which means we depended more on terms of borrowing from the African Development Bank to the World Bank and also the European Union. Those are the 3 that have had a big impact on the infrastructure side. If you see all the roads that we are constructing, either it is those organizations, or we also borrow from the Exim banks, Exim Bank of India, Exim Bank of China. Those are the ones that have been really financing a big chunk. Now we have got more of the institutions like the European Investment Bank that has come in, and this is helpful because they are helping to finance the energy, the water, the sanitation, and also the roads. All these donors coming together. But having a sector, a cluster that we are discussing together, we can identify together the needs, so that it's not just government giving them, but joint ownership of saying, these are the clear needs of the government. We need to discuss how they should be financed. So that dialogue, that discussion has been incredibly useful.
Now, what sort of specific tools has Rwanda put in place in order to ensure that these partnerships continue to flourish? Because in other economies, we've seen donors or partners pulling the plug, leaving and, of course, abandoning some of these projects. What is it that Rwanda is doing to ensure that these partnerships continue to flourish?
One is openness, transparency, and making sure we work together. There is nothing that is everybody doesn't know. And then from there, also the most important thing is performance. Once you perform well, once you absorb the money, once you finish your projects on time, and they are of high quality, then they can see that there is nothing, there's no reason why they can't support you. If they can't support you, it should be for other reasons, but not for the reasons of performance. So I think the issue is we have improved and working together with them, with their support, how we perform. And they have supported us generously into this area. And that's why we have, if you see, there is a fund, for example, for public finance management that they all contribute, that is managed by the Ministry of Finance, that is helping us in terms of even accountability side. But also in terms of the technical assistance, we have benefited quite a lot. We have built our capacity, and the performance is monitored by jointly with them. And once it is monitored jointly with them, then everybody is happy because everybody is involved. So this has been very, very helpful as a partnership, and that's why we call it, initially we used to call them donors. Now we changed it to partnerships because we are partnering in so many different ways. It's not just giving money, but at the same time it is working together to make sure that all the projects, programs are implemented and they benefit the population. Because for us as a government, we put more emphasis on results, on impact to the population. And infrastructure is a big contributor to that. When you work together as a team, you identify where the issues are, some of the issues in terms of capacity, which they have assisted in the Ministry of Infrastructure in terms of building the capacity. Here we have what do you call the sector-wide approach, the swaps that we have in the ministry here. The ones that are for energy, others that are for water and sanitation, they've been very helpful. And then for the transport system. That's where you identify not only the areas where you need to invest in and the follow-up, but you also say, what are the capacity needs so that you can be able to use the money that we put in place. And this has been helpful, and that's why the performance has been quite high, is because we've been working together with them so that we can be able to understand where the challenges, where the needs, and then how fast do we implement together. Okay, so this way then has allowed us, because of the good performance, the portfolio has been increasing quite significantly, seeing that we have the capacity to absorb the resources. You remember a long time ago, you would negotiate the resources, but absorption capacity was very low, meaning there's no institution that can give you more money if you have not used the previous money that you are given. But in this case, we have built the capacity, and we are implementing up to the standards. We are counting, and we are doing it also together. Where we have weaknesses, then they support us. But this has been a good relationship with the development partners in terms of the implementation of all our projects here. We have a significant amount of projects in the infrastructure sector. We can't go one by one, but we have so many that are being implemented, whether it is in the energy sector, where the World Bank and the European Union are leading, contributing significantly together with the African Development Bank. We have the whole road transport, where you find almost all the roads, I would say donors are there. The one from Nyagatare that goes through Komo and Basse, you find African Union with all the 5 Arab banks. The one from Ngoma to Nyanza, you find the World Bank, but at the same time you find the Japanese government that is also providing money. The one from Huye to Chibeho, you find this is the Exim Bank of China that is helping us in terms of implementing that road. The one from Basse to Butaro Chidaho, you find it is the Exim Bank of India. There are many. Yes, you can go on from Kajitumba up to Rusumo, then you find it's African Development Bank, there is European Union grant, but there is also the JICA, the Japanese government, that is also assisting into that. So you can see there is a combination of many. This is just an example. If you go to sanitation, water and sanitation, you'll find you find the African Development Bank that is also together with the European Investment Bank, and also others who are coming in terms of financing that sector. Right. And this is quite significant, as you've seen the whole amount that has been put into this sector.
You've spoken about accountability, and I want us to talk a bit about it deeply. What is there that you're actually ensuring that Rwanda is accountable, to both its development partners, and also development partners remain accountable to their commitments? What tools are there to ensure that accountability is actually there?
Well, the tools that we do, when we say within the DPCG, the Development Partners Coordination Group, and we group them into the different clusters in the areas of agriculture, in the areas of infrastructure, in the areas of this and that. So these are the people who are saying, these are the projects. This is the way we are going to be able to monitor together and be able to know exactly how the money is spent, accountability of those kind of resources. We share even the Auditor General's report, where they see for each audited projects how we have performed together. And then from there, once you are transparent in terms of how you do this, the tools are the normal tools of monitoring and evaluation. And then from there, every year we meet in terms of the development partners retreat, and then from there we evaluate ourselves. If there was a delay, was it because of the government? If it was the government, how was it done? If it is on the side of the donors, were the disbursements done on time, or they delayed, that's why the project delayed? So we go through those kind of technical details and be able to evaluate ourselves. And we have a whole big checklist that the Ministry of Finance uses to check for every sector. And then from there we can know where things went wrong, or where things went right and the project overperformed. So those are the things that we normally do and evaluate every year, and then shared, done together in a retreat, whereby we always look at the areas of weakness where we can improve, or we look at the areas of strength where we can apply to other areas. So this really has been very helpful for us.
There you have it, a rigorous journey, but a successful one on the right path. Clever Gatete, that is Rwanda's Minister for Infrastructure, speaking to us on this special edition. I'm Eugene Anangwe, signing off.